Jay Graham is out as the Alabama special teams and tight ends coach, and we need to talk about this because this is fairly surprising. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all, so hop down to the comments and let me know what you're thinking about this entire situation. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification because I do constant college football content. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and comment down below because that really does help YouTubers like myself get picked up by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's talk Jay Graham, and right now not much is known. I think everybody's pretty much waiting for Nick Saban to address the media this evening after practice so we can kind of fill in some voids about what's happening here. But if we listen to Aaron Settles of The Athletic, he does not believe that this has anything to do with the University of Tennessee investigations, but here's what I will say about that. It's going to be hard to kind of rule that out for certain given the scope of the investigation and given the fact that Graham was on Pruitt's staff when Pruitt's staff is going through all of these allegations. I'm not saying Graham is a part of that. I'm just saying that it is something we have to be aware of. And look, by all means, if Aaron Settles says he's not a part of it, then that's a very, very trustworthy source, a guy that we all need to believe. He does great work. But I'm just saying that as far as I'm aware, the investigation is still ongoing. And typically when investigations are still ongoing, you would have to hear from a source such as Tennessee or Alabama who would have gotten a finality of the investigation already or a precursory to the finality of the investigation that would have allowed that name to be cleared. Maybe he has. I'm not sure. But I've heard conflicting reports no matter what, whether or not Graham quit, whether or not he was fired. And at the end of the day, honestly, y'all, I really don't know how much it matters. All that matters is at the end of the day, he's no longer a member of the Alabama Crimson Tide, and a void must be filled. And for those of you that remember, before Jay Graham was hired, I was on record saying Kevin Sumlin would be a great hire. Now, I wasn't against Jay Graham. I thought Jay Graham was a phenomenal hire, a great hire, no doubt about it. But now that we're back to square one, a guy like Kevin Sumlin is still a good pick. But there is two schools of thought to what should happen moving forward, right? Whether or not you go with someone proven who understands the recruiting landscape and has been in the business for a while, or whether you try and get an up-and-comer that has been proving themselves and that you think you could capitalize on. Well, if you're going for the first, Kevin Sumlin is certainly a great coach. If the Alabama Crimson Tide could get Sumlin on staff, oh my goodness, the recruiting, especially in Texas, and then the coaching, I mean, that would be a masterful hire by Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. But a guy such as Bobby Williams, currently at Oregon, is another guy we could look to. Crimson Tide fans will remember he was previously on the Crimson Tide staff. He's familiar with Nick Saban. He did a long tenure at Alabama. And so there's a possibility Alabama could entice him to come back. I don't know how plausible it is, considering he and Cristobal seem to have a good relationship up there, and Oregon is building something, so we'll see. I don't think it's very plausible, but that is a name for us to watch out for. But here are some younger guys who would be very exciting. Now, the first one I don't think is all that likely, and I'll explain why it's not all that likely, and that's John David Baker. Now, John David Baker served in a grad assistant capacity at the University of North Texas, my alma mater, for Graham Harrell. He followed Graham Harrell to USC, where Graham Harrell is now the offensive coordinator. Now, the reason that's important is because he's been making waves in the coaching world and is considered a guy that is going to be a up-and-comer. He's a name that we need to remember, John David Baker, because in a few years, you're going to hear that name and wonder where you heard it from, and it was right here, us talking about him. I don't think it's plausible, though, that Alabama is able to get him as much as I would like it, because it would only continue to affirm their roots in the state of Texas, specifically this North Texas area. I'm very familiar with that. That'd be awesome. But considering the fact that he followed Graham Harrell to USC, that doesn't seem incredibly plausible. The other one that's interesting that I think is more likely than the John David Baker one, but less likely than our final one, is Conor Mcqueen. Now, Conor Mcqueen is an individual who has found himself consistently a part of some of the best offenses in college football. Well, no matter where he goes, he always seems to find himself in a revolutionary offensive system, and right now he finds himself at Oklahoma. Now, this could be a really interesting hire for Alabama if they were able to pry him away from Oklahoma and get him in this capacity, because this is another guy who we're going to hear his name, and I think it would benefit the Crimson Tide trying to get him sooner rather than later, because other institutions are going to be coming for him, and I don't think Lincoln Riley and them really want to let go of McQueen, because I think they realize what they have. This is a guy who constantly finds himself in incredible offenses, and there's a reason for that. It's because those guys have identified identified him as another guy to watch out for. But finally, the guy that I think is really interesting, and in my research last night, if Alabama was to hire a young up-and-comer, this might be the move. And it's Harrison Green, FIU's current special teams coordinator. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself because this would really be exciting to me. Now, he was a defensive coordinator at Johns Hopkins, and during his tenure at Johns Hopkins, his defense only allowed 17 points per game, and they went on to have a 12-2 season, and they got themselves a conference championship. So he found success as a defensive coordinator, he's familiar with coaching multiple positions, and his special teams coaching was very good. The interesting thing about him, though, is his start coaching. His start coaching started as a recruiting assistant at Penn State under none other than Bill O'Brien. He got his coaching start from Bill O'Brien. And because of that, now that Bill O'Brien is the offensive coordinator at Alabama, we could see him put in a good word for a Harrison Green, a young up-and-comer, and convince Nick Saban that that could be the way to go to get a younger guy on staff, because you remember how we've talked about, y'all, when you look around the nation, especially at these schools that are recruiting at such a high level, and certainly Alabama does it, these younger guys are connecting with recruits. Look at Brandon Harris at Texas, and then Brian Carrington, at USC. Two guys who are younger in age who are able to resonate with recruits and build relationships on an entirely different level because they act as more liaisons than anything else. And even though Harrison Green would be on an on-field coaching capacity at special teams and tight ends, the age would still allow him to be very relatable to recruits, and that's something that's very enticing. But I can't wait to hear what y'all think. What do you think happened with Jay Graham? What do you think the end result there will be? And who do you think will replace him? That's it. See ya.